Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 2 of Heart Talk. We've finally come up with a title, and I'm super excited. Here is my friend Alyssa, and I think she's a permanent member of this thing we got going on here. So she's going to recap what we had last week, and then what we're doing this week, and then we're going to go.
Woo! Yeah, unfortunately, you might be stuck with me, so sorry, not sorry.
No!
So, last week we talked about our favorite games of all time. I believe we did our top three, four, something like that. I have a terrible memory. It's fine. So we talked about our favorite games and a lot of qualities about what makes them good. So we figured the best direction to go with Heart Talk now would be to talk about the different portions of the game. So this week we're going to focus on the introduction. So what is the best setup for a game? It could be the story, the visual aspect, introducing characters, things like that. So basically, what makes a good introduction?
Yes. And so we're going to go through. So we'll talk about the aspects, and then we'll have a few examples of ones that of games that display this, and then maybe talk about. We may get to what our favorite game would be, what kind of aspects would be involved there, or you could just assume from the things we say beforehand. But yeah, so I guess I'll start off like I think what kind of the importance of an intro. People kind of skim past it because it's something you got to have, and it's kind of like an intro to a paper. You have to have it, but it's really important because it tells the reader or the player what's going to happen, and it's not just like a quick debrief or a quick brief of what's going on. You've actually got to have it set up the right way, and if not, the player could not. I mean, you buy money for the game and either return it or just not play it. It's that much, and the developers are even risking their franchise if there are more games in it. Their franchise on this aspect. It's such a big importance of words are hard. What do you think, Alyssa?
Yeah, so I think that was really good. I think that it is really important because even though it might be kind of short, in some games it isn't. Some games it can last hours, but even if it's a short 30-second blip, I think that there's two situations. So you've got a standalone game or the first game in a series, and that's the first time you've ever experienced the game. And that's the first time that you're ever going to encounter some of the characters and encounter the scenery and the style of the game. And also, if it's a sequel, you've got another important aspect of you're bringing a character. You've got maybe had 2 years of time, maybe less, maybe more, between when the last game was released, and you've got to not only kind of recap and cater to the people that have played the first game and kind of want that experience, maybe some visions of characters they've seen in previous games, the things that people get excited about, like, oh, there's that character that I remember, but also you kind of want to take care of the people that maybe are starting with that second. So, like, let's say it's the second game in a series, then the player's never seen half these things, so you've kind of got to play between these two sides and find a balance of introducing and explaining the premise well, but also going back to what's already been done and kind of recapping the story. So I think an introduction is really, really important, even though it might be a short part of the game. So I think that now we're going to talk about what we think makes a quality introduction, what really draws us in, what sets us up for an experience and makes us want to continue playing the game.
Yeah, so I think first what I wanted to talk about was with you talking about like the space between game segments could be long. I mean, it could be a year, 2 years, but my favorite example is Half-Life 2, which is one of my favorite games as well. Whatever, swag. But it's also a good example because the Half-Life games, as many fans of the series will know, are very spread out. I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it could be upwards of 8 years. We're still waiting on 3. We will be waiting on 3 till we die because Valve doesn't know how to count till 3. I'm fine. but they have it's fine. You have this huge space in between games. So, for example, Half-Life 1 was played or first played by a different generation that played than trying to figure out how to explain this. The people who grew up playing Half-Life 1 were different than who grew up with playing Half-Life 2, unless, they continued on from it. But so me, for example, I didn't even know Half-Life 1 existed. To me, Half-Life 2 was the first game in the series. So basically they had this task, since it was so far along from the first game, that they had to start it, and they had to introduce it very well. They had to throw all the story from Half-Life 1 into this intro perfectly to make the player involved, to have them knowledgeable about what's going on, and also, give them some lore about, what is going to be happening in the future, some foreshadowing. And I think they do that really well with a couple aspects. Like, they kind of put you through a couple of flashbacks. Blah, blah. They put you through some flashbacks to what happened at the end of the first game, where Gordon Freeman helped save the world, but also not, because he released all the aliens into Earth, and then kind of took you back to his present day, where Half-Life 2 starts, and you have G-Man in Gordon Freeman's dream, kind of continuing from that last game as if it was only 10 minutes ago, and he's basically saving Gordon Freeman from his inevitable death to kind of save the human race one more time, and then it'll happen again and again. But I think it was cool because they kind of ignored the fact that it's been such a long period of time, and they were easily able to throw these elements in while at the same time just kind of carrying on as if, we're just going to keep going. This is the next step.
Yeah, I think that, that is a good point, because the first thing kind of comes to my mind, a difference, I guess, of degree of a game that does it well and maybe doesn't do it so well. For me, I think that Oblivion, despite the flaws the game had and some of the frustrations, I think that they did a good job of, even though that was my first Elder Scrolls game, I went into that game not really knowing anything about the characters and the storyline and the premise behind any of it, really. I was completely new to it, but I think that they did a good job of kind of not expecting the player to know everything going into
Right.
it. So they explained, and it was gradual too. It wasn't here's all this knowledge, read about it in a paragraph, and have fun, because I don't have an attention span for that. So the way that they did it was just kind of this gradual introduction, and you kind of got introduced to the lore and the characters and the commonalities in the races in Oblivion really well, versus I think that a game that didn't do it as well for me was Assassin's Creed Revelations, because that was my first Assassin's Creed game, and I don't ever think I finished that game, because it really just it didn't. It certainly, some things were explained well, but by and large, I kind of never really felt for me at least, and I think that there's a lot of people that love the game, and I think it is a well done game, but personally, it didn't really draw me in, and the introduction, I think, was a huge part of that, is they had an opportunity to really engage me as a player, and that wasn't there for me. So I think that really, especially when you're dealing with sequels, that makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. But I think. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I think that momentum is really important. And just kind of what I was going to go off of that is, I think that any introduction, like you kind of said, talking about papers earlier, they're going to give you momentum to play the game. So when you don't have a good introduction, you kind of lose that momentum. And certainly a game might be able to make up for it, but it's hard. I think it's a lot harder to engage the player if you don't have a good start.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite aspects of an intro is how they kind of make you play from the perspective of whoever you're in, and so you may either, if it's a sequel, you're kind of playing the end of the first game, and then you're bridging the gap to the next one or something. So BioShock I really like for that. So in the beginning of BioShock 1, you don't necessarily play it. It's a cutscene, but it shows you from the very beginning what happens. It's a guy in a plane, and he's just looking at some photos of loved ones, and then all of a sudden his plane crashes in the sea, and you stumble upon this lighthouse, and he's like, what is this? I'm going to go inside of it because I probably will die if I don't. And then he ends up exploring Rapture. But you're doing this through the eyes of the character. It's purely expository. It's not really an action. There's no action involved yet. You're just kind of reliving this character's experiences up to the point where the game actually starts, and then you take the elevator down to get into Rapture, which is underwater, and then at that point the game starts, where you start talking to Atlas, and he's trying to lead you through Rapture to defeat Fontaine. But I think that was, they do a really good job, because they kind of, I love when developers make this seamless connection between a cutscene and the gameplay. I hate with a burning passion when you see this 4K HD resolution on your cutscene, and then it just drops to like 720p.
Nothing, yeah.
And you're like, cool, I'm playing garbage now. and it's seamless, where I am so fine with them degrading the cutscene as long as it makes it like one piece. So you're going from that to the game, and it's the same. And I love that. And that's what BioShock does.
Well, because you're trying to be immersed, and so when that happens, you're like, what?
Yep. You're like, I'm back in my terrible life. Great. I remember.
So I guess the next thing we can talk about is why bother with a good intro? Like, let's say you've got a certain amount of resources. Why devote resources to making your intro good rather than other aspects of the game?
Yeah. So... Wait, you said devoting to the intro rather than anything else, right?
Yeah. So why would we, like, why as a developer would you invest in an introduction? What is the benefit of that to engaging the player?
Well, I think, like I was saying earlier, it's kind of like a return for your profit. You know, you're putting in the money now to make. Well, they got to choose the aspects that they want. If you're going to be an average game and not amazing like some of the games on my list that do everything really well, but you got to determine what portions of the intro are going to be exceptional. But also, they're going to have to make sure that they're constant, because like we talked about just before, it just the same with the cutscene being different from the gameplay. If your intro is vastly different than the rest of the gameplay, it's going to feel uncomfortable and unnatural. So, man, yeah, I just think that's important. A big reason why they need to put the effort into making that special.
Yeah, I think that first impressions are everything, and like you said, it's not, like, certainly you could make up for it, and even so, like, if you've got a really good intro, the game could still fall, because that's kind of like what I was saying with Oblivion earlier, is even though I thought they did a good job introducing the game, ultimately, certain things felt tedious, and so there were, that didn't deliver the whole experience for me, but it's a huge part of it.
At the intro?
But I think it's just kind of, yeah, I was saying, even though the intro was good, it still, it didn't necessarily make the whole game, like you said. Like, in terms of Oblivion, I got to a point where I was closing so many gates that I was like, what is life? What am I doing? Like, I can't do this anymore. So, because I think I have tapered out of games before that have really good intros, but at the same time, if they don't set it up well, then it kind of makes me question why am I bothering with this? So I think that first impressions are really important, because, and even for demos, like I don't know if they do demos quite as much as they used to, but back in the day when demos for games were a lot more prevalent, that would really be the first thing you saw, and that might be the reason why you bought the game. Actually, I don't know that. Do they still make demos for games? Is that still common practice?
They do, but it's not terribly. It's not like you seek them out like before. Like I used to go to the grocery store and get handed game demos every once in a while, or you see them online. But really, like, I'll only see them if I go into like a PlayStation shop, and it'll be rare, like few and far between that I'll actually see. So it's not commonplace anymore.
Not common. That's so funny. That just hit me. I'm like, wow, because like I think that Mass Effect 3 was probably the last game that I had a demo for.
Yeah.
And that was 2012. So maybe that point is less applicable. So I wonder do you think that so maybe in a time where demos were more prevalent, maybe introductions are more important. Do you think they're less important now that might not, you might buy the whole game instead? Do you think that makes a difference?
Yeah, I do.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because then you don't have that piece that pulled you into it originally, the demo. But I can't think of how many times I played a demo before I actually bought the game. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not. And I guess if you, I'm thinking, oh, animated demo, and I'm more thinking of I go to get a game. I feel like with maybe some mobile games, they still have demos, and there's betas, I guess, but betas are a little different, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting. Well, more knowledge. But yeah, I think that there was a time when an introduction probably did make or break the game, because back when there were demos, if you didn't entice the player in that first short window of gameplay, then they might not have bought the game. But nowadays, it might be less important, but still, I think, important in different ways. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think, especially the AAA companies rely a lot on their previous franchises to have those purchases, and then I guess it's less of the demos rather than just marketing now, because you can also compare the advertising campaigns between older games like PlayStation 1 games, which are just kind of like silly, and a lot of Nintendo ones are like that. They just kind of like make little skits so you laugh at it, and you're like, oh, maybe I want to buy Super Mario 2 or something. But now
Right.
the commercials are really like you're watching the demo. They try to throw in the gameplay footage. They make that really clear gameplay footage, but it's not. They're lying.
Oh, I know, right? It's like,
Yeah, I'm sitting there like the Willy Wonka thing with my head leaned on my fist, and I'm just like, yeah, you're really telling me that? Do I get a money back guarantee on that one?
Yeah, I know. It's like in bold letters, and you're like, wow, yeah, we'll see. We'll see when that game drops if that's really the game.
Yeah.
That's so true. Are you saying that, Mike, everything on the internet is true and everything on TV is true? Game developers would not lie to us to make us buy the game. That's ridiculous.
Or tell us that we would need to buy DLC to get the full aspects of the game realized.
Gosh. Oh, I so hate DLCs. I don't know if anyone else has the same opinion on me as this, but they make me so mad because oh gosh,
I do too. I'm just
like
weak.
Mass Effect. Oh yeah, see, you're not. Oh my gosh, I can't afford to spend hundreds of dollars. And I think I respected DLCs back when they enhanced the game, because there was a time when you bought DLCs to get extra map packs or things that would make it more fun but weren't necessary. But I don't want to give away any spoilers much. Well, how are we feeling on Mass Effect spoilers? Have you played through Mass Effect 3
No,
yet?
but I can take off my headset for a second.
No, don't take off your headset. I'll just be vague. I'll be extremely vague. So basically, I played through Mass Effect 3 when it came out. Whatever, done. Come to find out later, just happenstancely was watching playthroughs and saw some people play through the DLCs, and it's not it changes the entire story. Like it's like a huge chunk is missing from the main storyline, and in a lot of background of why the events that were happening in Mass Effect happened. And I was just kind of taken aback. I was like, really? They took this out of it? Like, how could they, like, and, maybe you could just make the argument that EA Games is just, not always.
Yeah, I would. EA Games just kind of does what they want for money.
I get it. They're a business and they need to make money, but it just seems to me that.
Yeah, but they're getting
I
greedy.
don't know. Or at least some kind of warning,
Warning: this franchise will turn to garbage once you start buying DLC. Or pre-ordering. Please stop pre-ordering, people. Or like.
Yeah, I would say Mass Effect Andromeda is probably my last pre-order.
Well, pre-ordering is not bad because you can get the cool stuff that comes with it, but pre-order it like a month before it comes out. When you do it a year before it comes out, all that's doing is like putting money in their pockets, and they're like, "Ha, we don't have to finish the game now," which is sad.
Well, and I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine about that. He was saying he kind of thought it was okay for the bigger franchises, but he said that for indie games. What do you think about that? So would you pre-order indie games?
Ah, man, probably not. I mean, because I don't know a lot of indie games that have that, that would give you those extra
As an
bonuses.
option.
Well, in the option as well,
Yeah.
but probably not.
There's also Kickstarters, too.
Yeah,
So
I love
guess
Kickstarters.
I think it probably depends. I feel like it's probably situational because, maybe someone you've never heard of and you've never seen their product delivered, you might be more hesitant to devote money. But if there's someone that is so small that they can't get a quality production started, then, maybe it makes sense to help them out. But I agree. I think that if you've got it, for me, what would make or break pre-ordering is if I had a company that was consistently putting out really good games, and they were always good, and I knew what I was getting every time, sure, why not pre-order? Like, that's
Yeah,
great. But
but it's
at the point where, I pre-ordered, I pay $70, and I get a game that's really not polished and not finished and needs more work, then it makes me question, I think I should wait. For me, it's a lack of patience too. I think I'm so excited for this next game in
yeah.
the franchise. Like I really want to play it, but I think it's worth it to wait because you've got those patches that come out anyway. Because you've got that first round of people that play them, and there's a lot of things that have to get polished and cleaned up and fixed. So, if I can force myself to be more patient, it probably is the best.
Well, and I think the pre-order thing is like a cause and effect scenario where over
Back to introductions.
over I know. Okay, so but first, so it was like that back in the day, where like the DLC came with the game, and then one day some guy was like, we can make more money if we do this, because then we're guaranteeing our sales, and then we can forecast what we need to produce better and things like that. And then after that, I think that's when it went downhill. Like you had these franchises making really good games, quality year after year, and then once this happened, then they were like, every year we can see like 50% of our revenue before the year, like a year till the game comes out, and then that's when they start picking away at certain parts of the game. That's where I kind of I'm not sure about.
I don't know. There was the time when I pre-ordered all my games, but even now, I recently I haven't seen a lot of kickback for pre-orders because
Right.
the games that I've got recently, I haven't even gotten like a lot because like you said that you get maybe an extra DLC thrown in or better content, something extra. But some of the pre-orders that I had done more recently, I didn't really get anything extra for that. Not anything particularly useful.
Yeah, you get like armor that doesn't really provide any structural integrity.
It's a prettier color.
Yeah,
you get the armor with the logo on it. It's like, why does that benefit me?
Right, and that's just I guess it's just how it is now. Then they're gonna get cheaper with all this stuff, and I mean I just try and wait if I can, but it really depends.
Yeah.
Like the Kickstarters, I almost kickstarted Shovel Knight, and I was really sad because I stumbled upon it after they finished the Kickstarter, so I was like gonna throw in $25 so I could get the game and didn't. But like stuff like that's cool because I don't really care how the game ends up. Like if they got a good premise, they make a good case, and I've got some like extra money, I'm like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
It encourages independent developers, so why I like doing that.
Yeah.
But
that's what I was gonna say. Is I think that the flip side of it, the devil's advocate, is in those indie situations, you are helping an indie developer. You're helping someone that isn't like EA Games or Bethesda that has that financial back like already, that where they're set up to produce a good game. They may not be able to without that extra money, and so that money may be the difference of them getting the resources they need. So there are definitely two sides to it, but I think that I like what you said, where if there's a developer that you see, then you want to help them out. Like I think that's great, and that's definitely for the right reason. So I think that's a perfect situation,
right,
and how pre-ordering should probably be used versus paying for a game like Mass Effect Andromeda, where in the past we've seen that certain companies don't always produce a good product, and I think that Knights of the Old Republic 2 is a good example of that with BioWare, because which also goes back to introductions, because that game had a really good introduction and a really good, but in the end it as we were joking about earlier, our thought of the podcast is it leaves a lot to be desired. It flopped. It did, because you have this build up, so this character starts to be developed, and then it never goes anywhere, and you're like, what? Right. Wait, what? I thought, is there nothing happening? It's sad, it's frustrating, and I think that was a game where the indie developers, I don't know if that's the right term in this context, but there were a lot of people that came together and patched it and added a whole new planet that I believe that my understanding is that the original creators had intended to be there, but they ran out of time, and so the fans kind of came together and put a lot of those pieces back together.
I've heard that done
to the best that they could.
I've heard that done with a few games. Like the Steam Workshop, I heard gets mixed reviews on a lot of levels, but I heard some things that are cool. If if the community thinks, I guess community is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, that's right.
Like if they think the game isn't finished, there are people with the skills and talent and are totally fine with going out of their way and just like rebuilding DLC, and you get to play the game with, you know, maybe the same lore or something branched out in a different in the same
Yeah.
universe. But yeah, I think that's pretty cool. One point I want.
Awesome that we had those people, but
Yes.
it's unfortunate that they had to, because in reality they shouldn't have to.
Right. Yeah. But it's cool seeing what people will do for free. Like I was thinking of like some, and that sounds stupid, but some companies or ideas were made from just somebody like not getting paid. Like Wikipedia was kind of it was just a compilation uh of a bunch of guys' ideas, and they built it in their free time. And I mean, it's not perfect, but it's cool because it's this huge collection of ideas and history. It's like an encyclopedia, but you know it could be fake. But that and
The best kind of encyclopedia.
yes, exactly. Gmail is also one of those ideas. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, Google, they give their employees, I think, like 10% of their time. They tell them they can do whatever they want, and it encourages like engineering and
Fosters like their own ideas.
yeah,
Wow, that's like the
yeah,
smartest.
yeah, and I mean, it's true. It's like it's a proven method that some of the best ideas come from just people being them.
Bottom up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think that's just a testament to Google's success, is a company that really recognizes that its employees and the people that are on those lower levels really do have the skills and capacities, and when you take away that micromanaging and let them explore those own options, you really see the fruit of that, which it's so cool. I wish I could program, man. I wish I was better. Like, I see all those mods and things that people create, and I'm like, that would be cool.
yeah,
And certainly I could devote the time. It's kind of childish to be like, I can't do that. Like, I'm sure I could if I devoted time, but between working and sleeping, those are my priorities. So,
yep.
it doesn't leave a lot of time to learn programming and how to mod things.
And when you spend 15 hours doing each of those, you can't really. Or I guess
Exactly.
12 hours is a half a day.
Yeah, that's true.
One other thing that I wanted to talk about with the intros was about the fact that some game, like, they don't all have to follow that same formula that we kind of drew out.
Yeah.
So games like, and I can't remember the indie developer that makes the Stanley Parable and the Beginner's Guide.
Oh, so good.
Have you played both or only one?
I've only played Stanley Parable.
Okay, so the Beginner's Guide is similar but very different. So I love my favorite part about the intros of those two games is how they drop you in, and more of the Stanley Parable is I mean, it's just it's a constant reset of the game. You just kind of walk and you open doors and you go different directions, and you're kind of exploring different options of what can happen, and the narrator tells you different things. But there's no beginning story. There's nothing. You're just in the office and go. You figure it out. And similar to the Beginner's Guide, which is a really, 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 really good expository type of game. I like artsy, sort of. It's not overly artsy, but you're not really playing. You're kind of just walking in it's sort of like an interactive movie. But it's about this guy talking about his interaction with somebody else who they used to make games, or the other guy used to make video games, and then the creator of Beginner's Guide would play them, and they would talk about it, and the guy who created them didn't really like them, but the whole Beginner's Guide game, you play through each of the games that he made, and the narrator will talk about them. So that's one of the games that I think is cool because it doesn't have a big intro, but the expository in the middle body are what make it what it is.
Yeah, and I think that it also depends on the style of game too, because like you have a game like Mass Effect where in the first game you have to kind of have this big, like, you're on a spaceship, you gotta kind of build that hype, but for a game like Stanley Parable, it's almost the not knowing that makes it a good game, because you've got to kind of figure it out. But I think that was intentional, because there's definitely a difference between someone who intentionally sets up a game for you where you kind of have to figure it out versus someone who's just too lazy to put it in and thus just kind of throws you into it. And that's definitely not the case. I looked it up. It's Galactic Cafe is the developer and publisher for Stanley Parable.
Okay. Is it the same as beginners, or am I just crazy?
Let me check. I think it is the same, but let me check beginner's guide.
Yeah, I love... Oh, wow, I had it. I had something, and then it was just...
You just love... I'm Mac, and I love... Alright, so the beginner's guide... Well, it says that the developer is Everything Unlimited, so I thought they were by the same person, so maybe it's possible that they were just associated differently. I'm not sure, but maybe we're...
Yeah, I guess that is possible. But yeah, I guess, I mean, do you have anything else to add on this
No, not really. I guess just, like, the biggest thing is, what we kind of wanted to say briefly is, like, if it makes or breaks the game. So I guess I can give a quick synopsis first. So I think that an intro doesn't make or break the game normally, because if it's a short intro and the game is good, then it's not going to break it. But perhaps if the intro is really long and confusing and it doesn't make you care, then it can break the game. So what do you think? Does an intro make or break the game?
Well, I'm sort of a completionist like you, and I like to finish the things that I start. There are a couple I haven't, and it frustrates me that I haven't. But it won't for me, because I know that I'll just get really frustrated, and when I'm trying to play the game and beat it, I'm gonna really count on them to win me back because it's right. Like you kind of let you down in the beginning, and you're like, well, the rest has got to be way better than the beginning, because you're kind of going downhill at this point. So I don't think it would ruin it, but it's kind of one of those things where it needs to pick it up from there.
So it's kind of like an icing on the cake kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe it too, because I agree. I don't think that by and large it's going to break the game for me, but you notice. Like, I definitely do notice. It's like you're running a race and your partner just pushes you over when you're about to start running, and they just kind of push you over. So, like, you might get up and you might still finish strong, but you didn't really have a good... It wasn't a good... It could have been better.
Wasn't a good run.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Please, like and subscribe for bad puns, because that's what we do here.
Well, you want to comment for those probably, so I can get my just deserts. Ha. Okay.
Yes. All right. No, we're good. Keep them rolling. No, if we do bad puns, we're gonna be 3 hours.
So this week we did the intro. What we're doing is, I guess these first like 10 episodes or however many we are deciding this week what we're actually going to be doing, but we're going to kind of do what we think the best parts of video games are. So we did the beginning, the intro, then we're going to kind of do like the expository, and then what makes a good closer, separate videos or podcasts. And we're basically trying to give you a look into how we think and what our behavior is toward video games. And then, I mean, of course, suggest things that you want us to talk about, but we're going to start branching off from there. It's going to be definitely a mainly video game channel, but also we're going to talk about all the things because we can talk a lot, and hopefully you like to hear us talk a lot.
I know. I like to hear myself talk a lot.
Me
so
too.
If no one else benefits from this podcast, it's just going to be me. Just kidding. Yeah, we're really excited. So we'll see what direction it goes. But for right now, definitely we're going to focus on the video games, but we shall see. So like you said, if you have any suggestions, any soul-searching questions, like please ask me what my favorite pointless superpower is, because boy, do I have some good ones. So.
But my favorite was... I love the first one you said, though.
Was it the ability to breathe underwater except when you're wet? That's a good one.
Wait, no, I didn't hear that one. I meant the vanilla.
Oh wait, which one was the first one? Which one did you thought I said?
The ability to what was it? The vanilla one.
Oh yeah, the ability to emit a smell like vanilla at will.
Yeah.
These are not original ideas. These are superpowers.com, quality website, would recommend checking.
And if you want to hear more quality content like that, please watch, like, comment. No, don't feel obligated to do any of that, but just thank you for watching. This has been Heart Attack Mac and Alyssa, and you've been listening to Heart Talk. Have a good rest of your day.